The twin moons of Velkara burned bright in the alien sky, casting a violet glow across the sacred valley. Thousands of warriors from different galaxies gathered near the Ring of Flame, a colossal arena where ancient oaths and blood feuds were settled. This was not just another battlefield. This was a sacred ritual ground where only the strongest were allowed to step. Among them stood Kalisra, the undefeated champion of the Tyrixian Empire. She was feared across systems, known for her brutal victories and unmatched speed. Her skin shimmered like amethyst steel, her armor crafted from the bones of beasts that no longer existed. None had ever touched her in combat. None had even made her bleed. The Galactic Union had sent its finest warriors to challenge her over the decades. All of them had failed, but now someone unexpected had arrived, a human. Not from a warrior caste, not genetically modified, not born under a blood sun. Just a man named Elias Ward from Earth, a place the Council barely acknowledged. He walked into the arena with no glowing eyes or pulsating weapons. Just a simple steel sword and battered armor patched with cloth. The crowd of alien spectators erupted into mocking laughter. Even the announcers didn't try to hide their amusement. A human entering the sacred ritual was laughable. To them, this was suicide. Kalisra didn't laugh. Her eyes locked onto Elias with the same calm she gave her deadliest opponents. She sensed something strange in him, not power, not speed. Something deeper, a silence. A discipline she rarely saw in warriors anymore. She raised her blade to greet him with honor, even if she was certain of his quick defeat. Elias didn't speak. He bowed, then stepped into the circle drawn with blood-red dust. The ritual began with the drumbeats of the ancestors. The crowd chanted. Energy surged. The arena shimmered as the seal closed them inside. No one could leave until a victory emerged. Kalisra moved like lightning. Her strikes were perfect, precise, meant to end the fight in seconds. But Elias blocked them. Not with superhuman strength, but with timing, with footwork, with sheer patience. She slashed for his throat. He bent at the last second and countered. With a shoulder strike. It didn't hurt her. But it shocked her. Minutes passed. Then more. Elias dodged, blocked, and struck with humble skill. He fought not to win, but to endure. And Kalisra began to feel something she hadn't in years. Respect. For the first time, she adjusted her stance. This was no longer a lesson. It was a true duel. A roar went up as Elias disarmed her briefly, just for a second. But it happened. Her blade flew into the dust. She caught it again in the next motion, but the shame burned deep. She had never been disarmed before. Her blood boiled, but her mind sharpened. She launched a flurry of attacks. Elias bled. His lips split. His arm cut, yet he kept moving. He didn't scream, he didn't fall. Instead, he parried with a grunt and jabbed with perfect angles. He moved like he had nothing to prove, only to survive. And that changed everything. The crowd fell silent. The mocking had stopped. Even the elders leaned forward. A human was holding his ground against the galaxy's most feared champion. It made no sense, but none could deny what they were witnessing. Kalisra's face shifted from fierce focus to something no one expected: uncertainty. Then it happened. A feint. A pivot. Elias caught her wrist and locked her sword arm behind her. Not forcefully, gently, respectfully. He didn't push her down. He simply waited. Her eyes met his. The arena paused. Then Kalisra did the unthinkable. She yielded. Kalisra stood frozen in the center of the arena while Elias slowly let go of her wrist. The crowd remained quiet, as if afraid to breathe. The ritual seal had not broken yet. The ancestors had not declared an end. Even though she had yielded, the silence stretched long and heavy like a second battle. Elias stepped back and lowered his sword. His armor was damaged and blood stained the leather beneath. His chest moved with deep, tired breaths. But his eyes never showed pride. They only showed calm. It was the kind of calm Kelisra had never faced before. She dropped her weapon gently on the ground and raised her arm toward the central pillar of judgment. A blast of white light pulsed from the top of the spire, signaling the ancient's confirmation. The duel was over. The ritual had ended. She had lost. The energy field dissolved and the watchers gasped. Many of them still didn't believe what they had seen. Whispers turned to shouts. Honor-born warriors looked to each other in confusion. Kelisra, the undefeated queen of blades, had been bested by a human, but Kelisra's face was not filled with shame. Her eyes glowed with something else. Curiosity, intrigue. She stepped forward, ignoring the council members who approached with questions. She stopped directly in front of Elias, her voice low but firm as she spoke. "You did not win with power. You won with truth," she said. Elias tilted his head slightly, unsure what she meant. Kelisra nodded once. "I yield to no brute. But to a warrior of honor, I bow freely," she said before she dropped to one knee. The audience exploded into disbelief. It was not only the duel she had surrendered. She had also submitted her warrior code to him. In Tyrixian law, to yield in the sacred ritual was not defeat, it was binding. It meant the one defeated would now serve the victor's will. Elias looked around in panic. "Wait, that's not what I came here for. I didn't even know about this custom," he said. Kelisra looked up at him with a faint smile. "The ritual decides. Not you. Not me. The bond is made," she said as she stood once more. High above the arena, the Galactic Union's representatives stared from their balconies in shock. Their entire plan had been to show strength through Elias, to prove humans were not to be dismissed. But this outcome was unexpected. Even they had not prepared for this level of respect. The Grand Herald of the arena, draped in gold and feathers, raised his staff and declared the result to the entire galaxy. By blade and will, the Tyrixian warden has yielded to the human. Warrior, the bond is sealed. The right has spoken. His voice echoed over the land. Kelisra leaned closer to Elias. "You don't understand yet. But you will. This moment will change everything," she said. Then, with grace and discipline, she bowed low before him in front of millions. Elias didn't know what to do. So he nodded quietly. Later that night, in the grand guest halls of the arena complex, Elias sat alone staring at the sky through the crystal ceiling. Kelisra stood at a distance watching him. She no longer wore her armor, only ceremonial robes. Yet she still moved like a predator. "You shouldn't have bowed to me," Elias said, not turning around. "You're a legend. You didn't need to give that up." She walked closer and stood beside him. "You think strength is about reputation. It's not. It's about knowing when not to fight anymore," she said. He looked at her. "And now what? Are you my prisoner? My servant?" "I don't want that," he said. Kelisra shook her head slowly. "I am your bondmate, not by chains, but by right. It means I fight by your side until death or honor's end," she replied. The silence that followed was peaceful. Elias didn't understand everything, but he knew she was serious. He saw no fear in her, only purpose. The kind of purpose only warriors understood. Something far beyond politics or rank. A faint smile appeared on Elias's face. "Well then, I guess we better make sure we both survive," he said. Kelisra nodded with pride in her eyes. "You speak like a warrior now. Earth may not know it, but they've just gained a guardian," she replied. The sun of Velkura rose with golden fire over the horizon as warriors from all corners of the galaxy prepared for the next day of rituals. But none could stop talking about the event that had shaken the arena the day before. A human had defeated Kelisra, and now the galaxy watched what would happen next. Inside the chambers given to honored champions, Elias stood in silence while Khalisra fastened the last piece of her ceremonial armor. Even without the rituals, she moved like a soldier ready for war. Her focus, calm, and precision filled the room with quiet tension. Elias finally broke the silence with a question he'd been holding. What happens now? What does this bond mean for you and me in the eyes of your people? He asked. Khalisra didn't pause as she answered. It means I will go wherever you go, fight for your causes, speak your name with honor, and if needed, die at your side, she said without emotion. Elias shook his head slowly. I didn't come here to gain a servant. I came to stop a war. Before it starts, he said. Khalisra turned to face him fully. You did stop it. Just not how your leaders expected. By standing your ground, you showed the galaxy a new path, she explained calmly. Outside the arena walls, the Galactic Union diplomats argued over what to do. Some wanted to break the ritual agreement, claiming it held no legal power. Others warned that disrespecting Tyrixian law could ignite more violence. The human counselors were divided in fear and confusion. Khalisra led Elias through the sacred corridors of the arena toward the Chamber of Verdicts. The time had come for the High Council of Warriors to decide if the bond would be upheld. If they rejected it, the old ways would fall. If they accepted it, the human would be written into the codes of Tyrixian honor. Thousands of warriors stood in the chamber's stone rings, armor gleaming, faces painted with symbols of lineage. In the center, Elias and Khalisra stood before the 9 elder judges. Each judge had survived 100 battles. Each had lived through centuries of war. Their eyes pierced through Elias like swords. Judge Zarian spoke first. You are human. Your kind is new to our codes. Yet you stand here with the greatest of our kind bowing to you. Do you claim the bond? He asked. Elias paused. Then he nodded once and said, I do. But not as a master. As an equal, he replied. Whispers rippled through the chamber. Some scoffed. Others looked surprised. The youngest judge stood. You dishonor her by calling her equal. She gave her submission. You should accept it, he barked. Khalisra raised a hand to silence the room. He honors me more by seeing me as a warrior than any title ever could, she said. The elders fell into deep silence. Then Zarian struck the judgment stone 3 times. So be it. The bond stands. Let it be written into the codes. From this day, the human Elias is a recognized champion. And Khalisra is his eternal blade, he declared. The chamber thundered with mixed voices. Some cheered. Others turned away in disapproval. But no one dared challenge the ruling. What had begun as a test had now reshaped the future of galactic alliances. A warrior bond between species was now a living symbol of peace. As they left the chamber, Khalisra looked at Elias and asked, Do you still regret accepting the duel? Elias chuckled faintly. No, but I wish someone had told me it would. Come with this much attention, he said. She grinned slightly. Fame is a weapon. You must learn to use it, she replied. That evening, the stars shimmered brighter than usual. A parade of honored warriors filled the city. Banners flew high with symbols of Earth and Tyrixian unity. Elias walked beside Khalisra through the streets, neither smiling nor frowning. They walked like 2 souls joined by fire in a hidden balcony. Above, an old warrior whispered to his apprentice, Mark this moment. The deadliest blade now follows a human. This changes everything, he said. The apprentice nodded in awe. The stars above bore witness to the beginning of a new legend, **. The air around the ceremonial tower shimmered with heat as a new symbol was etched into the Pillar of Oaths. A silver crest merged the Earth sigil with Khalisra's warmark, bonding them by ritual law. For the first time in galactic history, a human was carved into a sacred warrior record. Elias watched the symbol take shape, feeling the weight of a galaxy's gaze press upon his shoulders. He hadn't asked for this, He hadn't trained for it. But somehow he had become part of a legend. Callus Ra stood beside him, silent, proud, but always watching. "Every mark here belongs to someone who changed the course of war," she said. Elias didn't answer. He knew this wasn't about his strength. It was about what his victory meant to others. To be human and to be heard. This was something Earth never believed possible until now. That night, a council banquet was held in the grand hall of the Thousand Flames. Callus Ra entered first, dressed in ceremonial black, her armor polished with dark obsidian shine. She took no seat, for she was no longer only a guest. She was the living blade of her bondmate. Elias entered second. He wore a simple robe, unarmed and calm, in contrast to the shining armor of everyone else. His steps were slow, deliberate. Every movement observed by dignitaries, warriors, and politicians from systems he didn't even recognize. Yet no one dared laugh anymore. The High Chancellor of the Galactic Union raised his cup. "We toast not to victory, but to unity. May the bond of warrior and warrior remind us that honor knows no species," he said. The room echoed with cautious applause. Some raised glasses. Others stared in cold silence. As the night wore on, Callus Ra led Elias to the outer gardens where only warriors were allowed. There, fire pits burned in circular rings, and old fighters shared tales of scars and survival. The moment Elias stepped in, every head turned to him with silent judgment. One old general stood. His face was marked with a burn that never healed. "Human," he said in a gravel voice. "I saw the ritual. I doubted you. I thought your kind was soft, but you held the line. You earned her yield. You've earned my respect," he said as he offered his blade for Elias to touch. Elias nodded and touched it gently. In warrior tradition, this meant recognition. Callus Ra said nothing, but her eyes shimmered faintly with pride. She knew that winning battles was one thing. Earning the respect of old warriors was another. Elias had begun the true fight now. Later, back in their private quarters, Elias sat on the stone ledge looking out at the endless stars. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "Tying yourself to me, leaving your old path behind," he added. Callus Ra sat across from him and took a deep breath. "No," she said softly. "My path was always one of blades and blood. But now I fight for something different. Not for empire, not for honor alone, but for meaning. You gave me that," she finished with clarity in her voice. Elias looked down at his hands. "I was just trying to survive. I never thought survival would come with this kind of responsibility," he said. Callus Ra walked over and placed her hand on his shoulder. "Survival becomes duty, and duty becomes destiny. You're walking that road now," she said. The next morning, alarms sounded across the council grounds. A rogue fleet had entered the system, refusing hails, carrying forbidden weapon signatures. The peace was fragile, and someone was ready to break it. The warrior guards rushed to prepare. Callus Ra met Elias at the armory, already suited in full combat gear. "We're going," she said. "Wait, you mean us? Not the fleet?" Elias asked. She nodded. "They want to test the bond. We show them it's real. We face it together," she said without hesitation. Elias tightened his armor straps and grabbed his blade. This time he didn't question her. He didn't doubt himself. He knew what he had to do. He followed her into the warship. Without another word, and as the engines roared to life, the galaxy braced for what was coming. The warship tore through the void of space, its engines humming with controlled fury. Inside, Elias stood at the viewport, watching the rogue fleet grow larger on the tactical screen. Callus Ra stood beside him, helmet under her arm, gaze sharp. As ever, neither spoke as the moment drew near. The rogue ships had formed a wall around a broken moon, blocking all scanning and communication. Their hulls carried no national symbols, no allegiance to any known empire. but their weapons glowed. With stolen plasma tech, dangerous and unstable. These weren't soldiers. They were destroyers. Why target this system? Ilias asked as he strapped in his armor. Because it's where peace was last declared, Kelisra answered. They want to break the symbol before it spreads. We are the symbol, she added while locking her gauntlets into place. Ilias nodded. Then we make it unbreakable. Kelisra tilted her head slightly and gave a rare smile. Now you speak like a warrior, she said. The warship slowed. As it neared the enemy line and the bridge lights dimmed red, the time for words had ended. It was time to act. Aboard the rogue command ship, a massive figure in iron armor watched the incoming vessel. His name was Zareth of the Crimson Void, an exiled warlord with no code, no law, only hunger for destruction. When he heard a human led the bond ritual, he had sworn to erase the shame with fire. Kelisra and Ilias entered the drop chamber, where the pod would launch them directly into Zareth's flagship. It was suicide by design. But that was what honor sometimes demanded. Two warriors facing 1,000, not for victory, but to prove a message cannot be erased. As the pod launched, the pressure slammed into their backs. Flames streaked past the glass as the outer hull burned against shield flares. Ilias gripped his blade tight. Kelisra closed her eyes, centering herself. Together, they were calm in chaos. They were forged for this. The pod crashed through the enemy hangar like a hammer from the gods. Metal shrieked and explosions bloomed as they rolled out into hostile fire. Ilias ducked behind cover and deflected shots with precision. Kelisra leapt over him, her blade cutting through armor like paper. Zareth's forces poured in from every corridor, but they weren't prepared for unity. They expected Kelisra to act alone. They expected the human to fall early. Instead, they found a bond sharpened by purpose. One strike opened a path. One shield blocked a comrade. They moved like one. In a blinding dash, Kelisra cleared the stairwell while Ilias locked the doors behind them. They advanced level by level toward the core. Every inch was earned in blood and fire. By the time they reached the control chamber, Ilias had taken a plasma burn to his side. You're slowing, Kelisra said, pressing a seal patch to his wound. Then you better move faster. I'm right behind, Ilias grunted. She nodded and kicked open the final door. There stood Zareth, a mountain of metal and hate, holding a double blade pulsing with rage. You think your little ceremony frightens me? He snarled. You think mixing species makes strength? He shouted as he raised his weapon. Kelisra stepped forward. No, I think standing together breaks monsters like you, she said, voice steady and clear. Zareth roared and charged. The chamber trembled with his steps. Kelisra met his blade and sparks flew. Ilias circled behind, striking at joints and weak spots. Zareth swung wildly, knocking Ilias back, but Kelisra never stopped moving. She danced with fury and focus. At the perfect moment, Ilias lunged again. His sword pierced a crack under Zareth's shoulder. Kelisra followed with a deep slash across the chest. The warlord staggered, bellowing in disbelief. He raised his blade once more, but Kelisra drove hers through his heart before he could swing. Zareth fell with a thunderous crash. The room fell silent. The entire ship seemed to pause. Ilias limped to Kelisra's side, breath heavy but eyes steady. Is it over? He asked. She nodded once and spoke without emotion. It's over. The symbol stands, she said. Their ship returned minutes later, landing amidst the wreckage. The transmission was broadcast to the Council, to the galaxy, to every system that questioned the bond. They saw a human and a Tyrixian warrior fighting as one. And in that unity, a new fear was born in the hearts of warlords. When the footage of Ilias and Kelisra's battle spread through the galaxy, everything began to shift. No longer was Earth seen as a distant world of soft-blooded diplomats. No longer was Kalisra seen as a mindless blade for hire. Together, they became something new in the eyes of millions. Council chambers lit up with debates. On some worlds, the bond was seen as an insult to tradition. On others, it was a miracle. Of peace, protests sparked across systems. Some shouted for unity. Others screamed betrayal. Yet in the chaos, one truth remained: no one could ignore them now. Kalisra walked beside Elias through the Hall of Silent Shields, where great warriors were remembered in stone. "You've changed more in one duel than I have in 100 battles," she said. Elias glanced at her and replied softly, "I didn't mean to. I just did what I had to do," he said. They paused at a statue of a warrior who once stopped a civil war by surrendering his blade. "He chose peace at the cost of pride," Kalisra said. "Did his people accept it?" Elias asked. "Not at first. But they named a city after him later," she answered without looking away. In the shadows of distant systems, others watched with anger. Hidden warlords, exiled generals, and old enemies gathered in silence. Their power had always come from keeping the races divided. Now that unity had shown its strength, they began planning how to crush it. Kalisra received an encrypted message from one of her old commanders. It was a warning. A secret alliance called the Black Fracture was forming. Its only goal was to destroy the bond and anyone who supported it. They weren't soldiers. They were ghosts from past wars. Elias listened carefully as she explained the names on the list. Some he didn't know. Others he remembered from declassified Earth reports. Names tied to massacres, to crimes, to betrayals that never made the headlines. Now they were back and moving in silence. "If they strike, it won't be an open battle," Kalisra said. "They'll attack through influence, through sabotage, through doubt," she added. Elias nodded. "Then we need allies before the shadows close in," he said. She agreed and sent calls across the stars. Old allies of Kalisra began to respond. One by one, ancient ships arrived near the edge of Velkara space. Some came for her. Others came because of Elias. They didn't all understand the bond. But they understood one thing: anyone who stood alone was already defeated. Elias met with representatives from 3 warrior clans, 2 rebel fleets, and even a monk from the icy moons of Virus. Each had questions. Some doubted his strength. Others feared Kalisra's loyalty had weakened. He stood his ground and answered with calm and clarity. "I didn't come here to divide," he said. "I came because I believe peace is worth bleeding for. And if that offends you, then maybe you've forgotten why you carry a blade." He finished. His voice was not loud, but it reached them all. The monk from Dara stepped forward. "The bond may be strange, but it is not false. I felt it during their battle. I feel it now," he said. Others nodded slowly. The seed of trust had taken root. The storm was coming, but now they would not face it alone. Back aboard their ship, Elias watched the incoming reports. "They're moving faster than we expected," he said. Kalisra leaned over his shoulder, her finger tracing enemy fleet routes. "They're trying to cut off the trade arches. If they control that, they'll isolate us," she said. "We won't survive without supplies," Elias said. "Then we hold the arches," she replied. "We take the fight there, make it the wall they break upon," she added. Elias looked into her eyes and saw no fear, only a fire that burned brighter than ever. Preparations began immediately. The allied ships formed a shield wall near the arches. Defense grids activated. Civilian routes were cleared. Every gunner, pilot, and warrior was placed in rotation. Elias trained daily, not just with weapons, but with words, learning how to lead. As the stars turned red from the tension of war, Elias stood before the gathered fleet. "They will come to break us, but they will find unity. They will find resolve. They will find us, he said. The warriors shouted in answer, blades raised high. The sky above the arched void turned dark as the enemy fleet approached like a wave of black steel. Dozens of ships moved in a slow, hungry line. No banners were flown. No warnings were sent. The Black Fracture had arrived not to negotiate, but to erase. Elias stood on the command deck, armored and silent, watching the radar light up with red. His hands were steady, his face calm, but inside, his thoughts burned. This was not a mission. This was not survival. This was war. Kelisra stood to his right, eyes focused forward. The moment they breach the grid, we strike, she said. No retreat, no surrender. This is the line we draw, she added. Elias nodded without looking away. They'll try to divide us first, hit the smaller ships. Make the others panic, he said with certainty. They always do, Kelisra replied. She reached for the warblade resting at her side, the same one she had once raised against him. Now it served his command. The bond they shared had been tested by fire, and now it would be tested by blood. The first strike came swift and brutal. A Fracture scout cruiser zipped through a weak corridor and fired a plasma lance at a rebel ship. Shields flared. Debris scattered. Before the screams could even echo, Kelisra was barking orders over the comms. Retaliate with controlled bursts. Draw them inward. Make them commit, she commanded. Elias relayed the commands without hesitation. He moved like a general, spoke like a soldier, and fought like someone who had something worth dying for. As the battle thickened, dozens of ships clashed across the void. The Allied fleet held its formation, but barely. The enemy's ferocity was matched only by its precision. The Black Fracture wasn't an army. It was a machine built from hatred and vengeance. In the middle of the chaos, Kelisra launched with an assault squad onto the enemy flagship. Her blades spun through corridors, cutting down mercenaries and saboteurs. Her movements were sharp, fast, a perfect balance of strength and grace. Every step she took was toward their leader. Elias stayed aboard the main vessel, directing defenses and holding the grid together. He spoke to captains under fire, calmed panicking crews, rerouted energy from failing systems. Every choice cost something, but every decision saved someone. A scream broke through the comms. Kelisra's voice returned a second later. Breached the command chamber. Engaging primary target, she said, then silence. Elias gripped the edge of the console and stared hard at the screen. He wanted to be there, but he had to hold the line. Inside the enemy bridge, Kelisra faced the Fracture's high commander. A massive figure cloaked in red smoke, armor pulsing with dark energy. You betrayed the codes, he hissed. You bound yourself to a lesser species, he growled. Kelisra raised her blade. I did what warriors do. I chose the one who stood when others fled. You fear him because he made you small. She sighed, then she attacked. The clash of their blades rang across the deck. Sparks flew. Blood spilled. Pain filled the air like heat. Back on the command ship, Elias watched as 3 more enemy vessels broke through the line. Redirect fire. Focus everything on Vector 7, he said. We'll lose the flank, someone shouted. We'll lose everything if we don't cut the spear, he answered. A brilliant beam fired from the main cannon and sliced through the enemy cruiser. A chain reaction of explosions followed, scattering debris across the stars. For a moment, the battlefield slowed, but Elias knew better than to relax. Kelisra's voice returned. Commander down. Enemy bridge destroyed. Remaining forces scattered, she said. The command deck erupted in cheers, but Elias raised a hand. Hold formation. We're not finished until they run, he said firmly. Within hours, the enemy forces pulled back, their ships limping into the void. The battle was over. But the damage was heavy. Lives had been lost. Ships had been broken. But the arches still stood, and the bond still held. The galaxy had watched it all unfold. The battlefield drifted in silence after the enemy retreat. Broken ships floated like grave markers, and the stars glowed softly through the smoke. Crews moved carefully among wreckage, pulling survivors, recording names and honoring the fallen. But above all, the arches still stood. Elias walked through the damage with his armor scorched and his left shoulder wrapped in bandage. Every step he took was painful, but he didn't stop. Every soldier that saluted him received a nod in return. He knew their courage had written history. Khalisra returned with her squad, blood still on her gauntlets and soot across her cheek. She didn't speak when she saw Elias. She just stood beside him, both of them staring at the great gate that had survived the siege. In that silence, something powerful passed between them. Across the galaxy, messages poured in. Some hailed the victory. Others warned of more enemies still hiding in the dark. Yet no one questioned the bond now. What began as mockery had become a symbol of defiance, of unity, of a future not built on fear. The Galactic Union held a new summit in the rebuilt Chamber of Stars. Elias and Khalisra stood before leaders, warriors, scientists, and elders of every known species. No guards flanked them. No weapons were drawn. Only truth remained between them and the galaxy. The Union Chancellor addressed the room. You stood together when the old powers tried to break you. You bled for each other. You fought for all of us. That bond has become something greater than ceremony. It is now law, she declared. A new pact was forged that day. A universal accord recognizing bonded warriors of different species as legal equals. No longer would honor be decided by bloodlines or borders. It would be judged by courage, trust, and sacrifice. And Elias and Khalisra became its first bearers. Later that night, beneath the twin moons of Velkara, the two stood alone at the ridge above the valley. Fires flickered far below where soldiers gathered for song and rest. The stars above were quiet again. Peace, fragile but real, had returned for now. Elias looked out at the sky and whispered, I never wanted any of this. But I'm glad I was there when it mattered. Khalisra replied without looking at him. You didn't win because you were strong. You won because you refused to fall, she said. He turned to face her. What happens now? We're not at war, but the galaxy is still watching, he said. She met his gaze and spoke clearly. Then let them watch. Let them see what a true bond can do. Let them see us stand even when the wind rises again, she said. They stood in silence for a while before walking back toward the fires. Soldiers from a dozen worlds rose to greet them, voices raised in songs from different tongues. Unity didn't need one language. It only needed shared purpose and earned trust. As dawn rose, a new banner flew above the highest spire of Velkara. It held no single planet's mark. It was stitched with the crest of the bond. A sword crossed with a flame, surrounded by stars. It flew not for war, but for those willing to fight for peace. In the years that followed, stories of the sacred duel were told across colonies and cities. Children wore costumes of the human and the warrior. Statues were built in both their honor, not as conquerors, but as protectors of what was nearly lost. Khalisra returned often to the valley where it all began. She trained new warriors not just in combat, but in values. Discipline, mercy, respect, and Elias served on the council, never chasing power, only guiding it toward balance with a quiet voice and steady hand. Together, they built bridges between old enemies. They dismantled barriers made of pride. And wherever doubt returned, wherever violence threatened again, they stood side by side as proof that two could stand where millions once fell. Their bond never broke. Their names were etched in every war college, every shrine, every oath spoken. By warriors young and old, they did not end conflict. but they gave the galaxy a choice. And sometimes that was enough.